Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Janelle Slade.
And I'm Russ Riesinger. Tonight, a disturbing update that brings more gruesome details to the surface in a West Yellowstone murder of a child.
A 14-year-old boy will be charged as an adult with deliberate homicide in what prosecutors say was the systematic torture and brutalizing death of 12-year-old James Alexander Hurley.
The details laid out in a 22-page court document.
MTN's Cody Boyer reports.
Be so cruel and so cold-hearted to especially your own grandson.
Court document after court document has revealed what Gallatin County prosecutors have called a horrific story. Systematic abuse to 12-year-old James Hurley at the hands of his grandparents, Patricia Batts and James Sasser Jr. According to court documents, Hurley was found dead on the living room floor of his West Yellowstone home after Batts called 911 with a different story, claiming the boy had been hearing voices, threatening his family and harming himself. But it's Hurley's uncle, 14-year-old James Sasser III, whose story unraveled. At first, court documents show Sasser told investigators that Hurley had run into an entertainment center, and on the night of January 27th, saw Hurley standing over Batts with a knife as she slept. But those same court documents show he admitted that he had made that part up. At that time, Sasser told detectives he tackled Hurley, punching him several times on his body and on his head. And detectives made another note. Hurley weighed only 103 pounds. Sasser III weighs 300 pounds, standing 6 feet tall. The documents go back to the videos, filmed by Batts and Sasser III. And on Sasser's own phone, another video captured Batts holding Hurley against the wall by his neck, strangling him. No other arrests have been made at this time, yet the investigation is not over. In Gallatin County, Cody Boyer, MTN News.
Again, to make it clear, Sasser III is now charged as an adult for deliberate homicide.
Now, Batts and Sasser Jr. are both charged with deliberate homicide by association. All three face up to 100 years or life in prison.
A Billings police officer seriously injured on Saturday when a 14-year-old driver slammed into him, went home from the hospital this morning.
The Billings Police Department says Officer Jeremiah Adams underwent surgery to reconstruct his left leg, but is expected to return to full duty after 5 to 6 months of recovery. The 14-year-old driver who hit Officer Adams as he was standing next to his patrol car is being held on a possible charge of attempted murder. Adams' canine partner Susan was not injured in the crash, and we're told that will remain at the officer's side as he recovers. The teenager responsible for a horrific deadly crash in the Heights back in the fall of 2018 has agreed to a plea deal. This is video of the accident which left 20-year-old Haley Hudson-Byler dead at the scene and her passenger seriously hurt. Yesterday in Yellowstone District Court, Jacob Standing Elk, who's now 18, pleaded guilty to mitigated deliberate homicide and 2 counts of assault with a weapon. Prosecutors say Standing Elk was suicidal and intoxicated prior to purposely crashing his car head-on into Hudson-Byler's at a speed of 123 miles per hour. Standing Elk faces a minimum of 2 years in prison. A sentencing date has not yet been set. A Hardin woman who helped 3 inmates escape from the Bighorn County Jail is now jailed in Billings after a shoplifting arrest at Walmart. 24-year-old Odessa Cotier is wanted in Bighorn County for allegedly calling the Hardin jail on Friday, February 10th with a false report to lure deputies out of the facility. Now, the inmates then allegedly assaulted the lone deputy on shift and escaped. Billings police say yesterday a Walmart employee saw Cotier remove tags from items in the store and try to leave. She bolted for the door but was eventually stopped. Escapees Stephen Caplet and Anthony Castro were arrested in Billings just days after the jailbreak. Andrew Parham remains at large. Now, the alleged getaway driver in that jailbreak was arrested last week. Hardin will soon have its own police force after the city council voted in favor of forming its own department. The city council vote came out 5-1 last night to establish a municipal
police department and a 3-person police commission. The first year is expected to cost about $520,000. Now that amount to pay for a police chief and 4 or 5 officers.
A 3-person commission, the mayor and a consultant will hire the police chief. The chief will then hire the officers who will work in Hardin with sheriff's deputies.
That'll help allow the county to be able to move that next step farther out into the county and kind of help as a buffer. So everyone's not coming to town, you're kind of keeping things at bay before they get to the city limits. So that's kind of part one. Part two, of course, is overall public safety. And then the third part, of course, would be having a better reputation, safer community to help promote some economic development.
Mayor Purcell expects to get the commission together and start looking for a chief within a month.
Now, if you plan to speak out for or against the proposed non-discrimination ordinance in Billings next Monday, be ready with your talking points.
Now, last time an NDO came before the council back in 2014, public comment lasted into the early hours of the next day. Mayor Cole and other council members are hoping to move more quickly this time around.
Q2's Mitch Laggy sat down with the mayor today to get a sense of how this discussion will play out. Mitch.
Russ and Jeanelle, efficiency is key in Mayor Cole's mind heading into next Monday's meeting. He told me that people should be prepared to cut down their 3-minute comment to 2 or 1 minutes. Traditionally, a person is allowed 3 minutes per comment at the city council meeting, but the mayor has the authority to change the timing, duration, and date of the public comment as long as it is given a reasonable opportunity to be heard. Cole said if there is abundant public interest after the council has heard from the public for about an hour, he would start dropping the comment length. As well, the NDO discussion will happen at the very end of the council meeting with an agenda that is already packed full. Cole said that people should be prepared to wait to speak if they come at the meeting's start.
We do have an obligation to hear from the public, but legally we don't have an obligation to hear from every single person in the public. And so I think after we've had a fair amount of time, especially given all of the input we've had already, that'll be sufficient. But it will be important to be very efficient in receiving and making comments.
Since we are still days away from that meeting, Cole said his plan is not set in stone. The vote on Monday will decide whether to put the NDO on the agenda for the council's March 23rd meeting. It needs 6 yes votes to move forward. Councilmember Pam Purinton told me today that she will be voting no. She disagrees with the notion that Billings will see less growth without an NDO. She also believes that the issue should be left up to the state legislature and not city governments. Today, Purinton told me, quote, "At this point, my vote against an NDO is a vote having faith in the community of Billings to be that welcoming, diverse community that we say we are." We also asked Mayor Cole how he will vote if asked to split a tie vote again, like Tom Hannell in 2014. He declined to answer, but he has been on the record opposing the previous NDO. Russ and Jeanelle.
All right, thank you, Mitch.
Well, that meeting starts at 5:30 p.m. next Monday in the City Council chambers in City Hall.
Well, 6 Democratic presidential hopefuls faced off on the debate stage in Nevada, but all eyes were on the newcomer, billionaire businessman and former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg.
His late entry is shaking up an already unpredictable race for the nomination and made for some lively conversation on stage. Danya Backus reports.
They can do.
Billionaire businessman Mike Bloomberg got in the debate ring in Las Vegas Wednesday night and quickly took heat from his rivals.
Democrats take a huge risk if we just substitute one arrogant billionaire for another.
Bloomberg is spending $415 million of his own money running ads in Super Tuesday states in a campaign directed squarely at Donald Trump, not the other Democratic competitors.
I'm spending that money to get rid of Donald Trump, the worst president we have ever had.
The former New York City mayor also faced questions about his record running the Big Apple.
Mr. Bloomberg had policies in New York City of stop and frisk, which went after African American and Latino people in an outrageous way.
The policy was abhorrent, and it was, in fact, a violation of every right people have.
And accusations about sexist remarks.
A billionaire who calls women fat broads and horse-faced lesbians. And no, I'm not talking about Donald Trump. I'm talking about Mayor Bloomberg.
Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar went after the mayor to release his tax returns.
It is a major issue because the President of the United States has been hiding behind his tax returns.
Bloomberg's rise threatens his more moderate opponents like Klobuchar and Pete Buttigieg. The former South Bend mayor swung at both Bloomberg and his closest rival in the first 2 nominating contests, Senator Bernie Sanders.
We shouldn't have to choose between one candidate who wants to burn this party down and another candidate who wants to buy this party out.
Bloomberg isn't on the ballot at this Saturday's Nevada caucuses, but he has double-digit support in national polls and will appear in next week's debate in South Carolina. Danya Backus, CBS News.
The Nevada Democratic Party said a total of almost 75,000 Nevadans have turned out to participate in early voting.
Well, on the weather scene tonight, Q2 Chief Forecaster Bob McGuire joining us with some good news about a storm headed this way next week.
Yeah, we were talking about a storm that could produce some snow for the Billings area, but now the latest computer models are changing things up. Let me show you what's happening. First off, it's just storm number 1. It's that low pressure cell off the San Francisco coast. That's the one we were first looking at. Watch what that's going to do. That's going to drop a little bit farther south. It's digging, what we call digging south. It's going to be now pretty soon by Thursday, 10 p.m. It's going to be off the Los Angeles coast. Then eventually, by the time Friday gets here, it'll turn. And by the time Saturday morning gets here, it'll be starting to move into the Four Corner states. And eventually that storm will come close to us, but not quite here. So that'll continue to trail off into the plains. Then storm number 2, that comes over the top on Sunday, 10 p.m., moving into northwestern Montana. But eventually, instead of coming into the Billings area, it just shoots past us, and we'll just see some scattered light snow out of it. So it looks like we missed both storms, and we don't have to do a lot of shoveling. We'll have more on our forecast in a few more minutes.
All right, thanks, Bob.
Well, Dos Machos is saying goodbye to Billings after some 40 years.
Now, the owners and management agreed it's time to move on to the next phase of life. The locally owned restaurant started out near Rimrock Mall, but moved to its current location at 980 South 24th Street West about 20 years later. The land and the building will be for sale, though the owners are still discussing what will happen to the liquor license.
60 employees were notified of the change last week. Some of them have worked there for more than 20 years. Staff says they're blown away by all the community support.
It's been home for a very long time. Yeah, we've all shed a lot of tears. Yeah, it's been great. The support of the community. Like I said, it's really touching to see how many people really care. So I'm thankful for that.
The final day of business will be March 31st. I remember when they opened there by the Rimrock Mall, which was pretty new.
Yeah, 40 years
ago. At the time as well.
You're dating yourself.
I know. Well, I was only 8 years old.
Right. Still to come on your 10 o'clock news, this weekend begins National FFA Week. We'll take a look at some of the activities planned for across Montana.
Plus, it may be winter, but Relay for Life kicks off its annual fundraiser. We'll take you there.
And later in sports, the Cats and Grizz get back at it this weekend in Bozeman. We'll hear from MSU's MVP on her introduction to this rivalry.
You're watching MTN News with Jeanelle Slade and Russ Riesinger. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire. And sports with Scott Breen. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.